On today's show, we have Fred Dunn. We talk about his beekeeping journey, dive a little bit into photography, and talk about his YouTube channel. So let's jump into it with the Fast Five. What's your name?
My name is Fred Dunn. I go by Fred.
And what's your apiary's name? Do you have an apiary's name?
Yeah, the apiary is called The Way to Bee. And of course, it ties in with my name, but that just seems like a good title for it. So.
Oh, yes. Where are you located?
I am not going to be too specific because I don't like people and I don't want them to show up on my property.
Right.
But I'm in the northwest corner of the state of Pennsylvania. So in what's called the snow belt, we just got in the running there for the deepest snow in the country for the last big snowstorm that came through. We have 51 inches of snow already. So we're in an ag zone 4 and it's part of Erie County, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay. And you're getting lake effect snow as well.
That's correct. And the fact that the lake is warmer than normal, this is what the climatologists tell us, that normally it would be frozen over by now, and it's not.
Oh, yeah.
So it's carrying a lot of moisture. And if Erie is right at 500 feet above sea level, I'm at 1,300 feet. So we get that as it rises over that little range there, just that 700-foot rise causes it to dump a lot of precipitation south.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
When did you start with bees?
Well, I got my own bees. So studying bees is one thing, and actually having bees and keeping them here started in 2006. So that was kind of when Hackenberg is a member of our State Beekeepers Association, and David Hackenberg, and he did a documentary, actually was participating in it, about the disappearing bees. You may know that he's the guy that came up with the term colony collapse, because he lost his bees from his wintering station there. So he's a big commercial guy. And that's pretty much it. When that happened, I started keeping bees because I wanted to learn more about them. It wasn't really so that I could get honey or do pollination services and things like that. I study animals, like all kinds, reptiles, you name it, spiders. I'll go all over the place to video and just get my hands on them. And so honeybees, the idea of being able to keep them yourself, that was pretty interesting to me. I didn't even realize how easy it was to have bees in a designated area so that then you would have them close to make continuing observations through all the seasons. So that was kind of my start right there.
And how many hives do you manage?
I think there's 43 right now. I'm pretty sure 5 of those are dead already.
Oh, yes.
So if we're counting, I don't know for sure. My grandson, if he were here, he would tell you, because he's the one I send out in all weather to attend to the bees.
And I'm sure he does not get near as cold out there as you do.
I don't mind the cold, and part of the reason for that is I suit up like I'm going to the Arctic.
Oh, yes. Welcome to Apiary Chronicles, where we dive deep into the world of beekeeping and the people who make it all happen. I'm Cal Hardage, your host and fellow bee enthusiast. Earlier, you mentioned that why you kind of got into bees, it wasn't so much for the honey, etc., but you were the study of animals. Do you have other animals as well?
Well, we have chickens. I'm also a Pennsylvania Department of Ag poultry technician. So we've had chickens here on this property for 24 years, going into the 25th year.
Oh, yes.
So made a pretty decent study of chickens and published a video called Regarding Chickens back when they still had DVDs, and it was in all the special interest areas in your local library. And so that was a lot of fun. It took us 7 months to make that. So that was fun, but we've had animals cycled through here. You know, we've had the Australian emus here. We've had Tennessee fainting goats. So we're apt to have almost anything that I need to know about, because if it's something that we can put up fencing for and keep so that I can observe critical stages of growth and development, things like that. I thought about ostrich, but I mentioned earlier to you about the buffalo. There's a guy here that has buffalo. He also has ostrich, and he sells ostrich jerky. And one of his big male ostriches broke his femur and had him up against a fence. Emergency medical people couldn't get there. So I thought, I'm going to go with emu.
That sounds like a good reason
They're
to do
friendlier.
that.
They're only 6 feet tall. They max out at about 120 pounds. So that's a much more manageable bird than a 7 foot, 300-pound ostrich. So, yeah.
I have to agree. I think ostriches and emus sound interesting, but I read they can kick pretty powerfully, so it kind of makes me nervous.
That's
Of
how,
course,
yeah.
I get in a pen with 1,200 bigger animals, cattle, and other things. So I don't know why a bird worries me as more than the cattle do.
Well, you're looking at a reptile. You're looking at a dinosaur. And just look at those feet. They are impressive. That middle toe on these big,
Oh yeah.
they are. Yeah, you really have to know what you're doing, and the idea of grabbing them. So we could see that's why, as a poultry technician, you would have to go and draw blood from these things.
Oh yeah.
So you're supposed to go up with your knee sock on your hand, and you grab its head, you invert the knee sock over its head, and now you've got total control. So
Oh yeah.
now you can lead them around because they're covered up. But man, I tell you, it's impressive. If you've ever been kicked by one, it's not hard to figure out that they can do incredible damage. Yeah,
Oh yes.
yeah.
On that tangent, just a little bit more. I just discovered a podcast called "The Science of Birds" with Ivan. I can't think of his last name, but very interesting podcast.
Okay.
And going through his back catalog.
Okay. Yeah, most of my bird knowledge just comes from the Cornell University Department of Ornithology. So
Oh
you're
yeah.
kind of, yeah. And that's where I became a master beekeeper, is also through the Dice Lab at the Cornell University.
Let's just go ahead and continue on that because I had that down on my notes. What was the process to become a master beekeeper through them?
The process to become a master beekeeper is it's pretty easy. You have to, first of all, find a college or a university, or University of Florida has one. They have their bee lab down there. Find one that's close enough to you, because that was one of the things, was I wanted to make sure I could get to, like, the Dice Lab for me, Cornell University, is that's only a 4-hour drive. So I
Oh,
can
yeah.
get there. And it's not that you're going there for all your classes, it's that you're ultimately going to go there for exams, for practical observations and things like that. So part of that is, what's the history of the group? Who's doing research
Oh, yeah.
there? Well, at the time, Dr. Samuel Ramsey was part of Cornell. Of course, Dr. Thomas Seeley, Cornell, and then Dr. David Peck from Better Bee, Cornell. So it all starts to
Oh,
stack
yes.
up. And I thought, if I take that class, I'm going to get to meet all these guys.
Oh, yes.
They're going to want to talk to me, and we're going to sit around in the bee lab and drink coffee, and we're going to talk about entomological research, and Tom Seeley's going to bounce his ideas off of me. And none of that is true. So in fact, the closest you get to me, although, I've spoken with Dr. Sam Ramsey, he's fantastic.
Oh, yes.
And David Peck, he's a friend. But like getting to Tom Seeley, we met him through video, so, and he doesn't
Oh,
even
yeah.
come around anymore to give live presentations unless it's really local to him. So you're only going to meet him today through Zoom. But so I looked at research that was done by the institution and the background of it. They were also billed as the oldest and first master beekeeping program in the United
Oh,
States.
yes.
So that was another one. And people talk about EAS. EAS was another possibility, but I didn't like the fact that they weren't going to offer a bunch of academic courses, right? So
Oh, yeah.
EAS was more testing, exams, passing a board. All are great. They're modeled after the curriculum from the Cornell University Department for Entomology for the Dice Lab. And there was a time there where Cornell had shut down, so they weren't even offering it, and EAS basically picked it up. So the other thing was, a lot of people fail it. So I like that idea. I don't want to get in a program where everybody passes. Just take the course, right? And so, for example, just in our group, we had 150 in my class that began, and we finished 29.
Oh, wow.
So it can be hard on you. I think I didn't even think about becoming a master beekeeper until I had more than 15 years experience. I know that there are people that can become a master beekeeper in 5 years, 6 years. So again, depending on the institution, how much prior experience do you need? And then there are misunderstandings about what a master beekeeper is. Some people think, oh, well, they'll just know everything about bees. It's really not. And if you get into these groups, you'll realize fairly quickly that a lot of them are still on the learn pretty heavy. And
Oh, yes.
they've met the requirements to get that credential. But the point is, you identify people that will be good educators, good stewards of beekeeping, and will, of course, reach out, do things like I'm doing right now. We're going to talk about bees,
Oh, yeah.
helping educate the public. That should be at the core of what master beekeeper is. And I think that's what blew a lot of people kind of off the track. They didn't realize they'd have to get up in front of a whole room of people. They didn't realize
Oh,
there would be
yes.
entomologists on the board that would be very critical of, I don't know what your experience is with academics, but if you've ever had a professor or somebody just flatly say, yeah, well, you know what, come back next semester and you'll probably do better. Just instead
Oh,
of,
yeah.
oh, you've spent so much time, you studied so much, you did everything, but you really needed to score a 90 on this exam and you scored an 85. So we'll see you next year.
Yeah.
That is frustrating and stressful. And so programs like that, but if you can get through, then it feels like a much better achievement, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
So
Right.
that's
It will.
why I picked that one. Proximity, the reputation of the school. Who hasn't heard of Cornell? So
Right. Exactly.
and it can run into a lot of money. Some of these programs are not very expensive. Others can run into quite a lot. And so I'm a veteran, so I definitely took advantage of the veterans discount they offered.
Oh, yes.
So I was and that we could talk for a long time about that, but that's why I chose the program that I did. So many research papers, so many publications have come from the DICE lab. So that's it.
Oh, yes. I look at those programs and I think it's really interesting and something to achieve. Like I said, I'm very much an amateur and don't know enough. And then the more I know, the less I know. So
Well, let me
we're
just,
working on that.
well, the more you learn, the less you know. And that's because only the idiot knows everything.
Right.
And
Yes.
so anybody that, you meet those people. I learned when I was a teenager, never raise your hand and say, this.
Oh,
this.
right. Yes.
And so beekeeping in particular, and that's the appeal of it. Let me just say that I felt like I had a handle on chickens from beak to toes in the first year, right?
Yes.
And I did take college curriculum. I studied poultry science. I did all that stuff, hugely disappointing, not very exciting, mostly geared towards the industry and biosecurity and all that stuff.
Right.
Super snooze as far as the curriculum goes. But honeybees, if you meet somebody that says that they know it all about bees, you need to just move on, because even Dr. Seeley, some of the great minds in animal behavior, he doesn't pretend to know. What he is continues to be on the learn. And those are the people I want to be around. I want,
Yes.
I like people that have a good grasp of it, but they're also, as my uncle would say, easily impressed, right? In other words,
Oh,
I
yes.
didn't know that. Look what's going on over here. So bees are, just an endless resource of finding out new things. There's always something going on. And we're dealing with an insect that people have observed in detail, thousands of years. So, I mean,
Oh,
bees have
yes.
fascinated people, just aside from the utility aspect of having bees. Just me as a person interested in animal life, they are extraordinary. And that's the appeal forever. And you'll never know it all. And that's also why they're fantastic.
I feel like I took a step back from my beekeeping the last 6, 7 years because my job took a lot of time, and last 5 years, I'm just lost on some things. I'm like, whoa, what? What's going on there? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, part of that, Cal, is look at the entomologists that are doing research. If you want to get a PhD, you have to cut new ground. You have to find something out that's new. And I have given away audio recordings, video of behaviors, right, to these PhD candidates. And in some cases, those working on their master's programs, I support them free. Like, I will help.
Oh, yes.
But there's an ulterior motive to that. So it's not completely generous. I want in on what they're studying. I want updates while they're doing it. And so this creates a network. It is disappointing to me, though. Sometimes there'll be a really brilliant entomologist that you feel like you're going to develop this research relationship with, but then they get snagged by some pesticide company and they're gone.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess that's where the big money is. Most of them are picked up by pesticide. Monsanto is no longer owned by it's not a U.S. entity anymore, but they used to harvest, they paid attention to some of the genius entomologists out there because they needed them to help develop pesticides.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah. Coming back to your bees, what type of bees do you raise?
well, they're just local. You hear this a lot these days, local survivor
Yeah.
stock, just bees that more and more I just cycle back my own bees. But there again, I don't know. We mentioned earlier that, we don't know who else has stock in the area. And bees are unlike, you mentioned cattle earlier. If you've got a fence, your cattle are under control. You know which bull is going to be mating with your stock. If only
Right.
bees were that easy, they're not, because we've got queens, maximum flight distances up to 9 miles. You've got drones that leapfrog from hive to hive to hive, which extends their
Oh,
range
yeah.
exponentially. So trying to control genetics these days is next to impossible. Of course, if I'm buying in stock, and this is what I tell people, because, it's a very common question. People are starting out with bees. What should I get? What kind of
Oh, yes.
stock should I have? In other words, what they really want is which bee is going to make beekeeping the easiest for them,
Right.
and
Right.
which bee is going to heal itself, deflect all disease, and chew up mites and hand them to you in a tray, right? So I did, a lot of research on that. In fact, in our course material, part of it was to list those like Purdue ankle biters and things like that, these
Oh,
genetics that
yeah.
are demonstrating that they have viability in the face of diseases that are vectored by Varroa destructor mites. We also got a little bit into tracheal mites, because you had to count those. So we need a hemoglycometer. You had to have a slide, and you had to do all that under a microscope and smash bee guts and all that.
Oh,
Look at
yeah.
that. But so I buy bee weaver bees. They didn't make the Cornell list, which I found interesting. And I thought, why not? These guys, they're doing
Oh,
survivor stock. They've got some buckfast genetics in there. So that became one of the things that I tell people: if you're going to buy a queen, at least support those that are doing the genetic research and that are really working toward a treatment-free kind of future. And those people strike home with me. And so if I can give them a boost by sending them customers to buy their bees, is what I do. I don't have a large enough operation here to do any genetics, really. And so when I see colonies that aren't doing very well, I'm at a number of colonies now where it doesn't hurt my feelings. This will seem callous maybe to a listener, but if a colony dies in winter, like, as I mentioned, I think I'm down 5 colonies already. Those are genetics that are not making it. So I have my answer.
right.
I have a core group of stock that now I'm self-sustaining as far as an apiary.
Oh, yes.
So I can produce as many colonies as I want in a year, which I don't want that many. So then the stress is off. People are
Oh, yes.
stressing and wringing their hands this time of year in the United States, because if you're in the South, you're probably facing a dearth. If you're here in the North, we're facing weird weather, dramatic weather. And then that's the proving ground. Can your bees sustain themselves with minimal care in the environment that you're keeping bees in, right?
Oh, yes.
So the more that they do that, the more you observe a vibrant, vital colony that's really successful, then it becomes much easier. Now I can just focus on, pun intended, with my cameras, the bees that are in different styles of hives and things like that give me better facility when I want to get access to them. And I'm finding healthy hives instead of, now I can take pictures of some disease. I can take a picture of sac
Oh,
brood. Anybody
yes.
need that? Because I can get you macro pictures of disgusting bees. So I'd much rather photograph healthy bees doing interesting things. So it
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
goes like that. I know I'm probably giving you way more than you're asking for, but it's it.
No, that's great. If I was a really good question interviewer, I'd have a ton of questions. We run out of time, but I'm not that good, so no worries. But I do have a couple of questions on what you said there.
Sure.
First, you mentioned your equipment. What type of equipment are you using?
When we say equipment,
or
we're
for
talking about
hives,
the
as I
hive
talk about.
designs. Okay, so
Yes.
well, there again, companies that have new hive equipment, new hive designs, new insulation or entrances or bottom boards or feeding systems. I'm one of the people that they reach out to,
Oh,
first of
yes.
all, to get ideas during research and development, which is very flattering from my end. I do have a background in material analytics. So I'm a non-destructive testing ASNT level 3, which means I'm an examiner as far as, first of all, finding out what the properties of materials are, how to find out if they fail, and then, of course, in
Oh, yes.
service, their degradation. So I have a full background in that, and now applying that material knowledge to what we're doing with bees works out because I know how to evaluate something, I guess, is the bottom.
Oh, yes.
So, of course, the Langstroth, we could just say the Langstroth frame is at the core of all the most popular hives. So once you have the Langstroth frame, and that's just because it's the most available thing, the feeders are designed
Oh,
for that. You have
yes.
the most options with the foundation and everything else. Anyone who's trying to make money in beekeeping today is going to focus on the Langstroth design. So now it
Right.
is a matter of what's the hive going to be made out of? So now we've got purists that really want only wood products. They want everything to have some cellulose base and organic material. So that's one group. And so we have those hives here. So we do cedar, hoop pine, regular pine. So we have all these different woods as well. And the reason we talk about things like hoop pine is because those trees grow really fast and it's a renewable
Oh, yes.
resource. So it's like slow growing
Yeah.
grass, basically. So there you look at that too, because as soon as you say cedar, well, where's that harvested from? Well, the Western United States, and it's all properly harvested and responsibly harvested and things like that. So then we get to the other extreme, which are the plastics, the insulated, the poly hives, which people overseas call it the polystyrene, and those are clad with more durable plastics. So that's another group.
Oh, yeah.
So, and again, we mentioned that beekeeping is evolving. And for some people, they think it's devolving because we're using man-made products in a hive
Oh, yeah.
and that bees won't be able to use it. That's another thing we commonly hear is that bees won't be able to use it. You can put bees in a fish tank. It's not allowed because you have to have removable frames where I live and you have to be
Right.
inspected. Because to be honest, if I didn't have to be inspected, I would have bees in the wall. This is really interesting. I have friends here that have bees in their house, and these are farmhouses that are over 100 years old. They like having them there. They just want them checked up on every now and again. And it's incredible. They allow
Oh,
them to
yeah.
live in their wall. And you think, well, what's the actual detriment to having bees in your wall? How about none? That wall is warmer than the rest of the walls in the house. So anyway, the Langstroth hives, long Langstroth is kind of the future for me because I plan on being old one day and I don't want to lift boxes. So
Oh, yeah.
Langstroth, we have Land's hives here. I have the Ivory Beehive, which comes from Israel. It was developed in a kibbutz there. Those guys were at the North American Honeybee Expo 2 years ago. So we've had that through the second winter, and it's a fantastic hive for bees, terrible hive for the keeper. So what I'm
Oh,
doing is
yes.
evaluating hives that we find that middle ground, great for the bees and offers facility for the beekeeper so that we can access them. So now we go to another kind of newer hive that they just finished their Indiegogo campaign, which is for the keeper's hive. And that's out of, oh, I hope I don't get it wrong, but I think they're out of the Philadelphia area or New Jersey.
Oh,
You
yes.
know who I'm talking about?
I do because I heard it on you were talking about it, so I had to look it up
Okay.
and see about it. Yeah.
So George, a lot of people don't know George and the guys that got together that came up with the keeper's hive. He's a physician. He never says that. You just think
Oh,
he's
yeah.
some guy that had a great idea. He's not just a physician. He's one of the guys that teaches physicians. So he understands again how to put together a plan and how to work things out. And so he's come up with the keeper's hive, which is keeping bees from your seed. I just ran into them randomly at the Pennsylvania State Conference. Oh yeah, so he's got to be outside Philadelphia because he was at the PA State Conference. And the idea of being able to pull frames from the brood area to the side and then having all your honey supers offset
Oh, yes.
seems really appealing to me. And they're doing some material experimentation and things like that. and they're upgrading all the time. So that's one of the ones that's new that I'm paying attention to. Apiary, it's a Turkish company, but they're producing them here in the United States. And so you see them at other big bee
Oh, yeah.
conferences. But as far as tools, like my wife was out yesterday trying to clean entrances on hives, and she thought I was just being negligent, and she was pretty upset with me. And she said, those Apiary hives are the worst beehives I've ever seen. And she goes, the bees are just dead. Like they're all stuck in the front and you can't even get them out. And I says, okay, there's one thing you never say to your wife. You don't say calm down.
No, you don't.
But
Yeah.
instead, I'm like, why are you even in the beer? And she thinks it's an emergency. So I said, okay, let's go and take a look at the Apiary hive. Have you noticed there are plastic dials, 2 on the front, 2 on the back? Do you know what those are? Watch this, because we had a warm up. And so I just turned the dial. It has an entrance now that's 3.5 inches off the bottom. And oh, look, they're coming out. You didn't even have to clean it. And you know what's cool about this hive that you hate right now? They thought ahead, and that's part of it. Let me show you something else. We go behind it. It has a removable tray. We pull this out. We dump the dead bees out. We put it right back. The entrances are clear.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
if you use that tone of voice, you need to run away right after you say it. So,
Exactly.
but the point is, they've put a lot of thought into these things and made them very versatile for the beekeeper as well as for the bees. But it's plastic, so you're going to have people that are never going to take a look at it as soon as they find out it has plastic components. So I test the full spectrum types of insulation from lamb's wool all the way to polystyrene to no insulation. And so we see how they're going to work out in this weather dynamic where I live. So,
Oh, very good. Now, one thing you mentioned earlier was you got into it to kind of study bees, to learn more about them. And you've also talked about photography. So do you have a background in photography?
Yes, I have certificates in cinematography and photography. My dad graduated from the New York Institute of Photography in 1960, and I graduated from the same institute. It's the largest and oldest school of photography in the United States. So there again, good professional curriculum. I know that today, people just grab a camera. Somebody says the pictures are awesome. Next thing you know, they're doing weddings. So that is entertaining to me forever. So because I know I'm going to hear from them again, and they're going to be in a desperate situation. I'm going to hear about how terrible their day was. And I get those messages where I'm never doing another wedding. I hated those people. Well, you kind of launched yourself too early. So, so again, why be a master beekeeper? It's if you want to tick all the boxes, right? We're not processing film anymore. So I wanted to be a photographer because digital came along. I knew because my dad was a photographer, never wanted to be one. He lived in the dark room. There's a color film darkroom over here. There's a black and white darkroom over there. He's retouching by hand in front of retouching machines. And that's just not a life I wanted. Now, he was incredibly successful. Everybody knew who he was. He was a fantastic photographer. But until digital made it immediate, that's when I became a photographer. And that's when I went to school. Even after I've shot, I've taken pictures my whole life. I used even, Super 8 video cameras. And then I was there at the expo in Tokyo when VHS cameras came out. And I bought a Panasonic VHS unit that hung over my shoulder and big thing that was up here on top. And they were separate. And so the idea of the immediacy of digital imaging, cinema, or still photography just made that perfect, because so often you go places where it's just you. You're going to come home and tell a tall tale about something that you saw, and people are going to not believe it. Oh, yeah? What if I have a picture? What if I have a video? I mean, I could think of a lot of stories I heard as a kid that came from old timers that I really wish I could hear the sound they're describing, or see this giant fish, or the snake that was as long as their canoe.
Right.
So today, the cameras, the digital equipment, there are witnesses to what goes on. It says in the moment. They're also teaching tools because now we can share with everybody. Any conference you go to, you're going to see PowerPoints. You're going to fall out of your chair and pass out and spill your coffee, unless it's a cinematic presentation that does not include charts and graphs, that is not heavy with scientific analysis. Those things have their place. But for me personally, if I come to a conference and I'm talking to someone, there's going to be a lot of pictures because that takes the pressure off of me to provide a lot of dialogue. And as you can tell from this interview, I don't like to talk.
Right, exactly. Yeah. What is your equipment of choice for your photography?
That depends on what I'm doing. So part of it is primacy. So what you use first, you're going to stick with. I was in the Navy, so I retired from the Navy, and we had experimental research and development with underwater imaging. So that exposed me to early computer groups like Hewlett Packard. They did all of our computer stuff. So we met engineers that developed stuff just for us. So Hewlett Packard became an early thing. And then Nikon was the imaging system. So and Nikon has a long history for underwater equipment. So there are even sport divers that use the Nikonus line of 35 millimeter, underwater cameras. And so they have a history, and the transition into digital was really good. And digital, you might imagine from a military aspect, becomes incredibly handy. Because back in the day, I don't know if you know anything about photographers' mates in the Navy. We have photographers' mates. They all have top secret clearances. So you would give your film to them. They would process everything. And then it had to be mailed, but it had to be courier. So if there's any kind of, sensitive information or images, when it went digital, now encryption was possible and immediate transmission was possible. So that was all exciting to me. I was just killing people to get close to any program like that. And so that was my history with Nikon. So then when I came out and digital, as a civilian, just there's the Nikon and the Canon people. The Canon people are the meanest people you'll ever meet. I don't care who's watching. And because anytime somebody comes up and goes, what kind of photographic equipment are you using? It's going to be somebody with a Canon.
Oh, yes.
It's never the Nikon guy. And and I have a friend from high school, Chris, and he shoots for NASA and he shoots all Nikon. So I just thought, good enough for NASA. I've had people actually say, well, you're not a professional if you use a Nikon. Okay, we're not having this discussion, which is exactly why, Cal, I don't have a photography channel on YouTube.
Oh, yes.
Because the infighting and the fan base for each brand, I'll use anything that gets me what I need in the environment that I'm working in. So there are hybrids of lenses now because Nikon doesn't make every lens I need. So there are other companies that make unique lenses. And so I used to when studying cinematography, I realized there were directors that had lenses made just so they could get the scenes that they needed to get in concert with their, of course, person who was in charge of photography. So these creative types were also using equipment astronomically expensive. Just you and I could not get it. So the capability of what's in your hand or what's on your phone right now is way ahead of what Spielberg used to shoot Star Wars. So we need to think in those terms, and it's inexpensive. You can't shoot 70 millimeter film. Could you imagine shooting a movie with 70 millimeter film of a bee emerging from a cell? You just blew $500 in processing, especially anything in slow motion, because the reel just goes. So digital imaging, cinema, stills, and now your cameras that do one can do both. What I'm looking at you through right now is actually a cinematic camera that's a Sony, and it's video only. And I know that people have vlogging cameras and everything else. It's a matter of what do I use? Whatever gets me the best possible image. So, and it includes lenses. Leiwa, if people are, if there's people that want to get really close, Camera, first of all, your phone. Pick your phone by the camera capability. They have incredible macro
Oh, yeah.
capability. It's no secret. Apple, Samsung, Galaxy Ultras are, if you're picking buy cameras, those are, the companies that make them. But Leiwa makes fantastic lenses. The people are fantastic. You can reach out to them, talk about custom lensing if there's some unique situation. If you need your lens to go underwater, if you need your lens to handle all
Oh, yes.
environments. So we're at an age, this is the age of image making, and it's embarrassing how little people are using what's out there because they're using what they know and they want it all user friendly. They want a GUI, which is the graphic user interface, and they want it to tell them how to use the piece of gear in their hand. And it should be intuitive. And if it isn't, they're never digging into all of the menus and everything. That's why people just don't know what their phones can even until they really get into the menu, but it does what they need and that's good enough. So
Everybody's so busy.
but to answer your question, yes, I have formal training both in cinematography.
Oh,
I was going to make movies.
Oh, yes.
And I wanted to make I like scary movies. So I was going to make a scary movie about a beekeeper that went, I'm saying this because I'm not going to make the movie, but I wanted it to be a beekeeper that was studying genetics, that developed this line that could be weaponized and you could send your bees, you could pheromone, attach your targets and go after them. And then, but the thing is, I think about Jaws and I think about Spielberg and the reaction from the public to sharks all over the world when that movie came out was to kill every shark they came across. And I don't need people killing bees and being terrified that that bee is somehow genetically modified to go after you. I know it's unbelievable today that there could be any kind of narrative that people would buy into that isn't founded in science. But let's just take that leap and say, let's not feed that fire.
Right. Yes.
So I will not make my movie about the bee geneticist, which would have starred me, of course. I'd have to be in it.
Right. Which I think that's interesting. I use my phone to take pictures, so I'm not even an amateur on that. I probably ought to dive into some of those menus and see what I can do because I look at those different photos and I'm amazed by what people can do, even with just their phone.
Yeah, until you get them big. If you're trying to print something, you'll see it degrades pretty fast. But
does it?
Most of the images today, live in the digital realm. So if you just want them for their Pinterest and their Instagram and, Facebook or whatever they're using. And so we're not in the age anymore of large scale print silver halide, on the walls, which is, because the problem is then the best picture is the next one. They're always looking to the next shot, the next shot, the next shot. Well, what else are you going to do? That looks good, but what else are you going to do? So can we not be in the moment for a second?
Just continuing on social media, you mentioned that a little bit ago, and we'll go beyond the buzz and talk about your YouTube channel and how it got started. What brought you to YouTube?
Well, YouTube, I joined YouTube in 2007. So a year after I started beekeeping, but it wasn't for bees. So I joined YouTube for somebody else because they needed to have me vote on something they were doing and it was tied in with Home Depot. And so I had to have a YouTube channel, but then I thought, people are going to want to see my artwork because I'm also a painter. So I posted videos of my artwork and I don't know what you know about the beginnings of YouTube, but they confined you to 720 by 480. That was the resolution.
Oh, yes.
You were limited to 10 minutes, which can force you to do something in 10 minutes, so much. Today, we can do the longest video you can do is 12 hours today. So, but back then, so that's how I started out was I thought it would be cool to do lessons because I was teaching art and design. I thought, we'll do some demos and I'll just set all the kids down in class and we'll make them all log in. They all had computers. I'll log in and I'll do a lesson. That way I can do it from home. And then I thought, I can make all these students log in and increase they can't subscribe, but it's view counts.
Yes.
So it was basically viral. I would get like 30 or 40 counts on a video. So I knew it was a big deal. And so it went from there, and then it was the same old thing. So the emus that I spoke to you about, I have videos of those hatching the eggs.
Oh,
I have
yes.
videos about chickens, all the different breeds, like 13 different nations, breeds, and things. So it just became a way to not answer everyone's, because at the time it was chickens. So I don't have to answer everyone's questions 100 times over. We make a video, refer them to the
Oh, yeah.
video. And that's why even today, if you go to thewaytobee.org, which is my YouTube, is where I do all my stuff for bees, but it's, people get surprised because, oh, this thing says fredsfinefowl.com. I don't trust that. Well, that's because I started as a chicken guy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it still is freerangechickens.org. That's mine. Fred's Fine Fowl. That's mine. And they all lead you to the same place because it's expensive to maintain a website. And so that's how YouTube started. And then the bees, of course, just eventually picked up. But early on, I got significant views just with the free ranging chickens.
Oh,
So,
yes. Yeah.
yeah. And today there's a million chicken channels. And today there's, I don't even know how many beekeeping YouTube channels out there. So I think about this a lot. If you were starting right now and you're going to make a YouTube channel, and who doesn't get excited about beekeeping? Who doesn't get excited about
Oh, yes.
their flow hive? And here's the honey coming right out of the flow hive. This is the first time anybody will have seen this on YouTube. That's what they're thinking. So they put it out there and they're very upset that they get
Oh, yeah.
300 views or 200 views because the market is full. Everybody knows if you want to make it in YouTube today, you need to be producing cat videos. So
Oh, you're right. Yes.
it's not
I forget.
honeybees. Yeah.
I heard numbers. The numbers on YouTube channels is just staggering.
It's worldwide. So
Yeah.
the exciting part of that is you are connecting with people. Think of communication. I have to give an upcoming lecture to a communications department at a local university, and mine's going to be about bee communications. But there was a time when you only communicated with people that were within the sound of your voice. And then later that was
Oh,
enhanced
yes.
by a telephone. And then later you could communicate by mail. You'd write a letter and send it out. And so when I lived in Italy, that was a 14-day turnaround, 7 days one
Oh,
way, 7
yes.
days back. And so the idea of immediate communication didn't exist. Today, we can see people anywhere in the world, just about, unless it's a YouTube blackout. You're not going to be talking to your, what would be a pen pal, but a YouTube pal in North Korea. You're not going to get
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So, but today we're immediately communicating with people and they feel like they know you. And you
Oh, yeah.
can, to some degree, get to know them. But this is kind of one-way communication. I'm producing a video, other people are consuming the video. So,
Right.
and then you get to see where you're popular. So you get analytics and so, wow, they're watching me in Belgium. What's going on? Oh, I need to start putting CC in Hindi because there are a bunch of people in India that are watching my videos. And so that's the other thing, it's translated.
Oh,
There's an
yeah.
auto translate function. So you just have to pick it out. So let's translate it to French. Uh-oh. Is it France French, or is it Canadian French, or is it, they have all these sub dialects of French even. So we're
Right.
in an age of immediate communication that's more versatile and more agile than it ever has been before. And I don't even
Right.
know what's going on in the future. But nothing beats in-person meetings. And that's why I like conferences. I like going to those.
Oh, yeah.
But if you've been doing this for a long time, as I have, people meet you that think they just know everything about you.
Oh, yes.
And you've
Yeah.
never seen them before. And it's a weird moment. Which you can I mean, it's friendly and everything, but to them, you're familiar. To you, they are a complete surprise. So, which is funny.
Right. I had someone text me just the other day and they said they had to hunt all over and they finally found a number that they thought might be mine to tell me something that I'd brought up on the podcast. And I in fact talked to this person on the phone. He's like, "I just feel like I know you." Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know you, but
Yeah.
he's super nice, but that's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
That relationship building that's really one way.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. Now with your YouTube channel, you started out with your photography, painting, got some chickens on there. When did you incorporate or bring the bees onto it?
I think the bees right around 2008.
Oh, yeah. So just shortly after that.
Yeah. So here's what's funny. If you go, and I recommend people do this, not to my channel, but on other people's channels, go and when you do your search on their YouTube channel, go to the oldest video they have first. First of all, it's a time capsule.
Oh,
So you
yes.
can see how young you used to be. And you can also see you're seeing them through the years. There are children growing up on YouTube.
Oh, yes,
So
there is.
when you
Yeah.
go back, one of them is a beekeeper named Natalie Summers, and it's called Beekeeping with Natalie. And I don't know if you have a plan to interview her.
I actually emailed her just the other day.
You did? Okay. Because it's really funny to see her at 12, I think. She's like starting out at 12, and her parents, of course, facilitated everything.
Right.
And today she's got her driver's license. She's 16. So just think of that, if somebody spanned 5 or 6 years, but you're in your late 50s, early 60s, the changes aren't that great. But when you have this young teenager growing into her role as a honeybee educator, it's very interesting to see how she's changed, both in what she even used to call her channel, but how she keeps bees, how she communicates, and how she's evolved in the public eye. So that's the other thing. You can over communicate. You can make people too familiar, and that's not good either. So I think this is where parents are critical. You've got a kid that's a young teen, that you need to limit what they're sharing. Like it should be topic specific. Don't talk about your day in school and what your school is and what activities you do. And, so there are some safety issues with YouTube. So, but for older people, who cares? Just never video the interior of your home. Don't show all your doors. Don't do videos about your latest security updates. Don't show where your cameras are placed and what camera system you use. Don't make it easy for the perpetrators. And I could teach a whole class, like you have a background teaching. I love to teach. And one of my favorite things that I used to teach in the Navy was anti-terrorism. Most of it it's for force protection. So most of it was lowering your profile and making sure that you're never the target. So, and all of that was changing up your schedule, changing up where you go, where you park, where you walk, what door you go through. If there's multiple doors, change it up. Don't eat at the same time every day. Don't shop at the same store. So all these things, and maybe I'm overreacting, but if you do this on YouTube, don't divulge too much about other members of your family. And it always bothers me because I'll see a video and I'll think, oh, that's a mistake. Don't show everything inside your house, and don't tell everybody, hey, by the way, next week, we're going to be gone for 2 weeks because we're going to go, you know what I mean?
I do. You see it on social media, people announcing, hey, I'm going to be gone. Well, thank you.
Right. And that's okay if you're going to be gone, if somebody's going to be around to watch your stuff. But it's happening with professional sports right now. You just hear about these athletes and people don't feel bad for them because they're multimillionaires and they're being but they're losing memorabilia and things, but they really have, they're going to be at the game. They're playing.
Right. Their schedule's out there for everyone.
Be security minded. So kind of a message to people that are starting YouTube channels and things like that. Don't give too much personal information. Try to be, on topic with what you're doing.
Right. During your journey with YouTube, you also made the leap to podcasting and releasing podcasts. What caused you to jump into the podcast realm, and how has that worked for you?
The whole reason I went to Podbean, and by the way, that cost me money. I want people to know. I don't charge anybody anything for like my podcast or my YouTube channel. I don't have a membership, schedule for that. And the thing is, people wanted to hear what I had to say, like especially the Friday Q&As, but they had data restrictions on their phones and things like that. So they did not want to listen to a full YouTube because they're just listening. So they don't want all the data being used. And so they asked if I would consider doing a podcast. So I looked into that. Podbean, I think it costs me $150 a year or something like that to have a
Oh, yeah.
Podbean, which is not terrible. But there again, you get an opportunity to monetize it just like you do YouTube, which I did
Right.
not do. And it was so that people, there were truck drivers that reached out to me and said, "Hey, I listen to you every Friday." That also, it's interesting you asked because it also figures into when I release a video. I try on Fridays to get it out before 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, because that's when these truckers are doing their commutes. And the ones that were the most
Oh, yes.
vocal were out in California. And one guy was like, "You can get me all the way from Anaheim to San Diego." And like, cause that's 90 minutes or something.
Oh, yeah.
So that also explains the time frame. So my target
Oh, yeah.
zone is right around 90 minutes. And so what I'm
Oh,
doing is I'm satisfying what probably just a handful of people have asked for. And then, because it's not, my podcast is not like viral. Like
oh, yeah.
there's only been like 150,000 downloads.
Oh, yeah.
But that's throughout the whole thing. If you compare that to YouTube, we get
Oh.
300,000 views every 28 days. So
Oh,
all
yes.
I'm doing is satisfying someone else who just wants to listen while they work, so to speak. And then if there was something that was visual, they can come back to it and go look at that. But that's why we do the podcast. But if we're looking at, comparing it to other beekeeping or bee related podcasts, mine is not like way up there. It's
Oh, yeah.
just a Friday Q&A that I'm just answering people's email questions usually.
Yeah. But on podcast, you mentioned something there that really appeals to me on podcast.
Mhm.
I know there's a certain podcast I listen every Monday morning because it's released, and when I drive to town on Monday, that's what I listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and each day has its own schedule of what I'm listening to because of the release. So it falls into that, and I can listen to it in the car. Of course, Spotify's going all in on video, wanting you to upload video on their platform, which just means another step for a podcaster if they want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the other and the Friday Q&As, there's a high school one biology teacher in particular. If the kids have been good, they play it in the
Oh, yes.
background, but it's the previous Friday's podcast because it doesn't come out early enough.
Oh, yeah.
And then they've reached out sometimes for a personal Zoom to the classroom.
Oh, yes.
So I really like stuff like that. Those are surprises that kind of work out. I'm like,
Oh,
you can
yeah.
get high school kids to listen to that. I don't know if that's the teacher. I don't know what's going on, but I'm trying to put myself in that seat as a high school student. Do I want to listen to
Right.
this guy? I don't know.
Well, to be honest, so my wife teaches kindergarten.
Yeah.
And she purchased it's a dog training tool button that you press and you record something, you press it. And she had me record her sentence for this week that the kids were having to use.
Okay.
And she's like, they got it in no time this week because it's a different voice. They hear yours all the time. Now this is a different voice, makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I'm sure those high school kids, part of it was like, I don't have to listen to my teacher now.
Or, yeah, I don't know and some people think I'm funny. And so have a dry humor. And if that translates and you have
Oh, well,
some
yeah.
smart alecky kid that thinks that's funny and they use that to launch some other humor off of, I'm good with that too, because I have kind of just made fun of people throughout my life, just in a dry, non-aggressive way.
Oh, yes.
But I'm always surprised when teenagers can relate to the way I'm responding to something.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it's fun. I'm not gonna lie.
So, you list there something that surprised you about having the podcast. What else has surprised you about the podcast and YouTube with your bees?
Well, I can definitely list benefits. When it comes to the YouTube channel, every YouTuber kind of draws their own group, right? Especially if they're repeaters, right? So you can use your viewers to get you deeper into a topic. I'm often absolutely amazed. There are people watching that or listening, but mostly it's the YouTube channel that will reach out and they know something that will benefit you.
Oh,
So
yes.
what you get from your viewing audience can be really a resolution of something that you've been pondering for a long time. So it's a feedback. And then you wonder, man, with that knowledge and with that background and with these resources, why aren't you doing like a YouTube? But you'll find out that these people do not want to engage. They'll even say, don't
Oh.
mention my name. Don't
Mhm.
refer to where I live. And so I'm very respectful of that. And that's another way, like how I set up how people can ask a question. They can go to the website and they fill out a form. It doesn't require you to use your email and it doesn't require you can make a
Oh, yep.
fictitious name. And I've actually made the mistake, Cal, where I've thought it was a fictitious name, but it's really their name.
Yes.
So I said, "Oh, well, I know this is a made up name and I'll say it." And then the guy will write me, go, "That's my
Oh, yeah.
actual name." So, but the thing of it is, the surprising aspect is, again, these connections that you connect with people in Ireland. I have an
Oh,
Irish
yeah.
last name, but I've never been there. And then you get some really funny communications also that are just kind of, we'll keep those tight to the vest, but they're hilarious. Like somebody decides they like you, like they really like
Oh,
you, and
yeah.
the way they say it is hilarious. But so, yeah, the feedback from your viewers can be incredibly beneficial. So that's another thing. We're collaborating with people that we never would have met.
Oh,
And
yes.
that again, they want to support. They don't want to be the face of something. So
Right, yeah.
that's a huge, and these friendships have spanned years now. So that's probably just a huge benefit is you do actually make connections, you do actually build friendships, and you do collaborate in very meaningful ways when it comes to research and development and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good, Fred. It's time that we move on to our famous 4 questions. I say they're famous, maybe just in my mind, but our first question, what is your favorite beekeeping book or resource?
I have a library of beekeeping books, but I'm going to say, if I had to say one book, well, right behind me is A to Z, ABC and XYZ of bee culture from 1929.
Oh, yes.
This way I'm not picking a living author, so I'm not having fights. I'm taking the coward's way out, Cal, and I'm going to say AI Root, that book. And you'll find out if you can get one of his old books, that one was published, as I said, in 1929. It's amazing how many new things aren't.
Oh, yes.
We think we're doing something cool. We've modified this hive. We've made something really interesting. And then you look in this book and, in 1929, the exact same thing existed, but it got tossed aside because commercial
Oh, yeah.
beekeeping wasn't happening. So yeah, I'm gonna say that book right there.
Oh, and I love that book. Now, I do not have a copy as old as that. I don't have an
Yeah.
edition that's from 1929. But that was one of the first books I was introduced to because my dad had it. So very interesting. I love the cover on that. I think I saw some newer versions of it that have
Well, there are. Yeah.
some updated
Oh yeah.
covers and stuff, and I'm like, I don't like that at all.
Oh, yeah. There's a massive volume which is after Langstraw's book. The Hive and the Honeybee. Trying to get a really old version of the Hive and the Honeybee, not easy.
Oh,
The
yeah.
new one is like an encyclopedia and it's been updated and it's not from Langstroth anymore. So to me,
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't, they try to make it an everything in one volume book.
Oh, yeah.
And that does not appeal to me. So
Right.
I like old, my grandfather instilled in me an appreciation for old books. And so that's why I like that one.
Yeah. Well, very good. Our second question, what is your favorite tool for the apiary?
Well, I want to say my eyes, but what's my favorite tool? I don't have a single favorite tool. It's going to be the Hive tool, I guess, because you couldn't do anything without it.
You can't do
And
much
when it comes
without
to
it.
Hive tools, I like the everything Hive tool. I've got all kinds of Hive tools around here, like this one right. Oh, by the way, talking about Hive tools, people see this design everywhere. This is the Kent Williams Hive tool. Kent Williams is a master beekeeper, and I was talking with him at a conference, and he invented this, but it's just
Oh, yes.
sold everywhere, and people don't realize he's the one that put the thumb on this thing and the little nail puller.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he's very modest about it, but I guess it's too simple to be patented, but people better be honoring
know.
Kent Williams. This is my favorite, this Hive tool with the narrow lifting side, and this has everything you need in a Hive tool.
Yeah.
This particular one just comes from Hive Life. Yeah, Hive Life put this out. They didn't mention Kent Williams. This is supposed to be so when you drop it in the grass, you can see it.
Oh,
Colors
yes.
are there. So finding a Hive tool with your lawnmower, not good.
Not good. No.
Okay.
Our third question, what advice would you give to someone just getting started beekeeping?
Just getting started beekeeping. That comes up a lot. Beekeepers that are just starting out, I highly recommend you find somebody willing to talk with you about bees.
Oh,
I highly recommend you find someone local to go and visit their apiary and find out if it's really for you. Make sure members in your family are not allergic to bees. If you are in rural America, you don't want to set up a bunch of beehives right next to a horse corral. And so realizing where you're going to be. So one of the things, aside from that, find a mentor, slow down.
Right.
People get excited, especially this time of year. I'm going to keep bees.
Yes.
They're online. I just ordered a package of bees. They're going to be delivered May 1st, whatever it is. Please don't do that. If you've never kept bees, I know there's people that have the t-shirts, bees don't read books. I get it. I'm a bookie. I'm into research. I'm into science. And it does not replace that interpersonal experience that you're going to have with a real beekeeper. Finding a beekeeper that will talk to you, that's important. That has people skills. So that would be a very good thing. The other thing is don't jump on a hive design based on just what that beekeeper keeps unless it really appeals to you, because you'll find that there are groups and associations that close the door on every style of beehive except theirs. I would recommend that you find a group that's inclusive, that allows you to ask questions, that talks about they're an eclectic group of beekeepers. Got a top bar person over here. We got a person over here that's Langstrong commercial. We got one over here, Langstroth, the backyard beekeeper, really savvy. Because that's the other thing. Somehow a commercial beekeeper knows more and a backyard beekeeper, not so much. Well, there are genius backyard beekeepers out there. So that's not always synonymous with a beginner. So just find out what kind of experience, how many years they've kept bees, where they are, and just be as on the go, on the learn, and probably do that for a year before you get your own bees.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, I'm going to say that pretty much. Look for inclusive people, open-minded people that are on the learn, and try not to join a club that's owned by somebody who sells packaged bees and queens.
Oh, yeah. Excellent advice there. And lastly, Fred, where can others find out more about you?
You can just Google Frederick Dunn, FrederickDunn, and that leads you to everything. Sometimes I seem like multiple people, so don't be surprised if it ties in with Getty images and things like that, because that's me also. But that's the best way. And the YouTube channel, of course, is Frederick Dunn.
Right.
And also, if you just Google the way to be, you'll find out. Again, I'm very easy to find. That's the good news about the years that I've been doing this. So, yeah.
And the way to be, you'll end up at Fred's Fine Fowl.
The way to be.org is fredsfinefowl.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the first time I visited your website, I was like a little confused, and I figured it out.
Yeah. Well, I've had people say, please change the name on it. Yeah, but I can't because that's the primary and that's blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, it's a really old website too. So
Yeah, it works. Well, Fred, I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us today.
thanks, Cal. I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.